Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have another special guest on, and I'll tell you why this guest is a special guest, because this guest focuses on an area that, oftentimes you don't really hear a lot of people talk about in business, but it is probably one of the most critical things to getting your message out, whether that's in marketing or whether that's internal communication, and it is around copywriting and copywriting coaching. So I want to welcome to the show Kristen Back. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much, Terrell. I'm so excited to be here. And yes, I'd love to talk a little bit about copywriting and content writing, because that really is an area that causes a lot of suffering for many entrepreneurs.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, before we jump right into talking about, the copywriting and what you're doing now and how you're coaching in that area, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a story. So basically, I've always lived in my imagination, but I never imagined that I'd be an entrepreneur one day. And when I, yeah, it kind of is a weird thing a little bit, because when I grew up, there were absolutely no entrepreneurs in my family or the circle of friends, and everyone kind of had a steady job, and they didn't even have a real career. They didn't actively pursue careers. They all did their job, and they were trying to do a good job. That was all. So I'm not terribly ambitious or anything. And yeah, so the kids in my circles, they just learned a trade and stuck with it basically for the rest of their lives. And there was nothing wrong with that, except that it seemed to be all wrong for me, and I couldn't really imagine that I'd be doing that. Yet I didn't quite know how to do that. So I just lived in my head and through books and my imagination, and that kind of future, like where I just get a job and stick with that, it seemed to be like a prison sentence. And yeah, it's not at all like something that I wanted to do. And then when I was reading, in my head there were always words, so many of them, and never ending stream of words. I don't know if everyone else is the same, but sometimes it feels a little bit like a curse, because I can never make it stop. There's it, yeah, I'm always thinking. And oh well, anyway, I was kind of addicted to words, and how the same words could be combined in millions of different ways to just create meaning and any context or any message you want. So there was this kind of power in words that captivated me, and it yeah, I found it fascinating how you can so easily just take words and do anything you want with them. And I made the decision that I wouldn't learn a trade, and that instead I would go to university and and be the first one in my family to actually do that. And I wanted to unlock the power of words. So my father was totally against that. And he said, "Oh, go out and kind of learn a job." So I went to a few interviews to get an apprenticeship, and I totally sabotaged them because I just didn't want to do that. And I enrolled at university to study English and Russian literature and linguistics alongside a teaching degree. So I wasn't quite clear what I wanted to do with that, but I was fascinated by languages as well. And well, I'm German, and we learn English very, very early on. And so for me, languages were also a door to the bigger world. So I graduated with a master's and a teaching degree, and then I did some teaching in the UK and in Kazakhstan, but ended up in the corporate world where I focused on a management career, because somehow that stuck with me. You have to get a job and do that. So I was in that corporate scenario, and a little bit always the odd one out, because I was in the pharmaceutical industry and everyone had a scientific background apart from me. And they always said, oh God, you can't have a career and all that kind of stuff. You haven't got a scientific background. But I said, yeah, I can. So I kind of experienced how communication can move past those obstacles and boundaries and create relationships and influence. And yeah, and that was a very, very important discovery for me, because you can create power through relationships and through words, how you communicate with people, if you are authentic and communicate with clarity. So, but also I discovered another passion of mine, and that was business. And yeah, always being a true German, you do kind of degrees and learn it properly. So I, on the side, while I was in corporate, I did an MBA.
Okay.
And yeah, I did that and got really fancy ideas through that. Yeah, but learning is one of my passions, so I can't stop doing that. And so I got this idea in my head that creating change in business would make corporate life more exciting. And because, yeah, because it was all these well, you've worked in corporate businesses, it's very siloed.
Mhm.
And often there's not a lot of going on the horizontal layer, so that the different silos work with each other and kind of form synergies. And I think that was something that was lacking, and I wanted change, and also wanted to find ways to make people happier in their careers, because also there was a lot of unhappiness in corporate.
Mhm.
So yeah, after my MBA, I looked closely at the business I was in and what I saw daily and what I experienced myself. It was just people dreading Monday morning, people being stressed. They were wearing themselves out to a degree of burnout, missing out on seeing their children grow up, and
Mhm.
all for the benefit of a corporate career. And that was
Wow.
totally me, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I was
Now,
no different. Yeah, sorry.
now, one question I wanted to ask about that, during that whole time while you were kind of seeing that, did you come across, other people who felt the same way, or were you feeling kind of like, man, am I the only one that sees this?
It was funny. I sometimes I felt like they were kind of a little bit like robots,
Mhm.
and they had this tunnel vision where they said, this is the path you have to follow. And especially in the pharmaceutical industry where I was, y- you had these different career paths. They were clearly laid out step by step. So you started as an admin assistant, then you became at one point maybe a project manager, and then you grew through the ranks. But there were some people who thought, oh, there must be something different. And there were also people who tried to um, be different in their own way, where they kind of try to make the system work better by introducing new thoughts and just being not so corporate and being nicer, basically. But um, then there were people who really played the system and played politics in the business. And I felt that was a really, really bad thing, because I saw lots of unhappy people because of
Gotcha.
politics. Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
So that eventually brought you into, your entrepreneurial path. And one of the things that you mentioned that I think was really, really good was, I mean, with learning about that words are like, the building blocks of your message. So how did
mhm.
you really start to develop an interest or an idea of saying, you know what, copywriting would be the path that I would build my entrepreneurial career around?
Yeah. So that was the moment. Was a really weird moment. So at one point, because I did all these change stuff, I basically I lost my job. I stepped on too many toes, I think.
Mhm.
Um, so I lost my footing a bit and moved to New Zealand to a totally different country. And there I tried out different things and said, I need to do something that I love. And eventually had the idea I would do something with writing, but it didn't quite click that it was copywriting. And I saw an old au pair girl that I had, and she worked as a copywriter. And I said, whoops, how that can that be? She couldn't even kind of talk a straight sentence basically while she was working with us. Also, she never seemed to be any reading a book or whatever. So I just investigated that a bit more, and then I found, wow, this is the perfect match between business and writing, because copywriting is about understanding business and extracting the messages and then communicating that to your audience. So yeah, that was a little bit of my light bulb moment. They say, wow, this is it. I can use writing to basically dig deep and extract those messages out of businesses. And yeah.
Now,
That's how
do you find that people understand, or they grasp the value of copywriting, or is it something that you tend to have to educate people to help them understand the value of it?
Yes, I always have to educate people about it. A lot of people, they don't even know that copywriting is their problem. So, for example, then they say, "Oh, I can't get leads," and they go and sign up with sales coaches or with marketing people and say, I need these leads. And when you dig deeper, you find out what they have tried to get leads. And when they, for example, when they're doing organic marketing, they don't get a lot of bites on or engagement with what they write, what they post. And their messages are quite confusing often, so that you find out, okay, it's in your messaging, it's in your copywriting. And when I work with them, after a while things change, and they realize, first of all, they get to understand their businesses a lot better, because when you write copy, you have to absolutely understand the foundations of your business. You have to be very clear, especially with smaller companies or with entrepreneurs. Who are you as a person? So what are your strengths, and how you can use those strengths to help your clients achieve their goals?
Mhm.
That's one thing. And then understanding your client to a very, very deep level, not just the details about the demographics, but the psychographics.
Wow.
That, yeah, so that you go really deep and then understand, give your business a kind of personality through your branding, and see what kind of message does my business have authentically, so that it's almost like a human being.
Mhm. Now, it sounds
So
like that there's a lot to it, because a lot of people may hear the word, or they look at marketing and it's like, oh, I just need to get out there and just write something and just tell people what it is. But there seems like there's so much more to it. So when someone's working with you, what are the types of services that you offer your clients and the people that are working with you as a coach?
well, I do three things. One thing is that I write copy. I wouldn't say I don't do done for you. I do done with you,
Okay.
because I always ask tons of questions, and I always make them go through the process. Who are you? Who's your customer? What's your brand? What's your offer? How does that all fit together? So I ask lots of questions when I write copy for people. So I'm clear on that, so that I can authentically, slip into that role and write copy that really resonates with them and their audience. So that's one thing. Then I teach copywriting one-to-one. When someone comes to me and said, I've got this business, but I really want to know how to write my own copy. So I work with them one-to-one, and I have a program how I do that. And then I'm just launching an online course as well, a kind of learning course, which is of course supported, but that's the same thing where I teach entrepreneurs how to write their own copy and content, and storytelling is a big part of that. So that's
Okay.
what I do.
Awesome. So where can people find you online, or where can they find you on social media to find out about those awesome things and doing business with you and that course that you have coming up?
Right, they can find me on LinkedIn. So they can look me up under Kristen Back, and I should pop up there. Then they can find me online under my business name, which is the Word Distiller. So if you Google theworddistiller.com, then you find my website, and I'm also on Facebook.
Okay, awesome. Now, one of the things that I'm curious about is, in copywriting, I mean, it's about taking words and making, a message. And with moving from, different countries and so many different languages, like, how do you manage and keep that all straight as far as being able to speak, in cultural context, or being able to write in cultural context, since you've moved quite a bit, and experience so many different languages?
That's a funny thing, with the languages. Your brain, it's like training your brain. It's like, or training your body. So you develop certain language muscles, I would say. And, the, you actually can switch quite easily between languages. Sometimes there are a few mental blocks. For example, now it's easier for me to write in English than it is in German.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's really, really weird. And when I was in Russia and in Kazakhstan, I spoke Russian all the time. Somehow my English was kind of sometimes blocked. So, but if you use all languages simultaneously, your brain adapts to that, and it's no problem just even within a sentence to switch between the languages. So, and the culture, you mentioned the cultures. I think learning a language gives you really, really good access to a culture, because through how people talk, that's how they feel. And when you kind of get the emotions, then you get that culture. And especially in international or global companies, you can always often see that there's friction between different cultures. And often these frictions occur because, first of all, people don't quite understand the cultures, and often because English is a second language for many, many people. And yeah, there's some misunderstandings, and there you always need to dig a little bit deeper and question and be a bit nice about it, and then you find out, oh, that person wasn't rude, it's just that he didn't know how to say it nicer.
Mhm. So before we wrap up, one question that I always like to ask every guest that comes on is, when you think about, your journey, and you think about your business, and you think about the skill set that you developed and expertise in, what's
Mm.
two pieces of advice that you would share with other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so my first one would be authentic. So authenticity is probably one of the most overused words right now, but for me it has a special meaning, because authentic means for me that I get up in the morning looking forward to my day, because I can be my authentic self, and I experienced corporate and what that was like. And um that means that I need to understand myself and my zone of genius is, and how I can live that and use that and be myself. So yeah, in my case, that's through strategy and communication in the form of copywriting or content writing, storytelling. So being authentic means to share information about yourself, open up, to be vulnerable, because that makes you human and relatable and approachable. And then you can share your ideas and your opinions, and that lets people engage and inspires people, and it also leads to the right people being drawn to you if you're authentic and just be yourself.
Awesome. Now,
Yeah.
Kristen, thank you so much for coming on to talk about your business. I think in talking about, what you're doing and giving us, sharing the wisdom. It's always a pleasure. I mean, I think from my perspective is to talk to people who are, well versed in copywriting. Because like you said, I think, words are the building blocks of your messages. I mean,
Yes.
and I guess before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to share with the audience?
I, yeah, a lot of people are scared of writing and writing copy, and they say you need to be a born writer. And that's a belief that is so wrong, because it's not an art, it's a craft, and you can learn a craft. So I would say just approach it differently. Don't be scared, because you have a message to communicate, and you are the best person to communicate that message.
Awesome. Well, Kirsten, thank you so much for coming on the show. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. It was an awesome experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like our content, be sure to follow us on social media. And if you want to see more of our exclusive content, you can subscribe and become a member on patreon.com/Business Talk Library. Hey, the Business Talk Library is the place where business makes sense.